Because you can do both long-range planning and short-range fixes simultaneously. Because we can do Mountain Way,
Right.
we can do Grannis, we can do our local streets, and then we can wrestle with the other stuff. But we can all do it as a plan for the future that's safer. We want to make Main Street, as the master plan says, attractive and fitting with the character of the town. All that's preventing us from becoming gold would be a complete streets policy. Safety is not a partisan issue. We want to make sure that if you leave in the morning, you get home alive at night. No tragedy.
If we put that infrastructure in place, then it's going to be easier for the businesses to want to build something downtown Morris Plains.
Hi everybody, Bill Houston here, HP for MP. Today we're sitting down with Jim Hunt, who's got some great ideas about complete streets, safe streets, and how we can improve downtown Morris Plains. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, take a listen, and enjoy.
Tyler and I today are sitting down with Jim Hunt. Jim, thanks so much for being with us today. Really
Hey, it's great to be with you guys. Thanks for what you're doing, getting people to talk about all these issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Appreciate you being here, Jim.
Yeah, it's some really important issues in town. Specifically, we're talking about the streets in Morris Plains, right, and how they can be a little bit safer, right, more friendlier for walkers, for kids, for bikers, for joggers in town. And in the chats that we've had, you've been a pretty good advocate for all that. And so maybe you could just tell a little bit about yourself and kind of some of the history that you have and your experience that you have, so people can get to know you a little bit.
Sure, thanks. First of all, I'm one of the few people probably born and raised and educated in Morris County. Been here for a long time. Lived in Madison, in Morris Plains, in Morris Township, in Denville, so I know the county fairly well. And when we decided that it was time to retire a little bit, we downsized here to Morris Plains because it was a perfect opportunity, we thought, for a town that you could walk in, that had green space, more green space than I think is close at hand in many other towns have for us to get to. And we saw the great potential that Speedwell Avenue, we thought, as a downtown would have. But we'd shopped in Morris Plains for years. And the town was full of what we think of as necessary for daily living at that point. But over time, especially with COVID, that's eroded. And what we've seen is that great opportunity right now is hanging in the balance. And will we begin to work toward the future, as many other towns in our county have? If you look at the downtowns of Chatham and Madison, facing some of the same problems that we have with the main road. If you look at what's done in Denville and elsewhere, all of those things are directed toward the future. We right now are not planning enough for the future. It's great in many ways, but we're not planning for the future. And that's my concern. Lifelong bicyclist, president of the local bike club, been involved in state level activities, led the campaign to pass the New Jersey Safe Passing Law, which says whenever anybody passes anybody, you give them plenty of room and pass them like you know them. It's not that car in front of you is in your way, it's your neighbor trying to get someplace. So that law's on the books. It helps pave the way, we hope, for other laws statewide that will enable towns to make their streets safer for everybody. Everybody, whether you're on a bike or on a scooter, walking, jogging, driving, because it's not safe for drivers either, the way we're going.
Right. No, those are all really good points. And I think one of the things that we were chatting about, just across the street here in my house is the library, right?
Yes.
And we have the concerts in Robert's Garden, happen every summer. It's an amazing thing, right? We get people from all over, right? Morris Plains, but also outside towns. Ice cream trucks are here. Kids are riding their bikes, riding their scooters, right? It's a wonderful event, a wonderful time. But because Glenbrook Road is such a main thoroughfare, right? We have people parked on one side of the street, and the police department's done a great job about kind of policing that, for lack of a better term, and putting the signs out so people only park on that side. But you still have cars driving through, right? And I've seen a couple times where kids have come out and they can't see around the cars that are there, and it's a little bit of a dangerous situation sometimes. But trying to also get people to come in from other parts of town that maybe they don't have to drive, right? Maybe they don't have a concern and where to park, right? Maybe they could
ride a scooter or ride a bike and come over here, right? But a part of that is making the streets in Morris Plains accessible and safe to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think led by the this movement has been underway for a long time, but right now, even at the federal level, we have Safe Streets for All funding that goes with that in order to begin to move us in the direction of streets that are accessible and safe for all users, whether you're walking, riding, whatever you're doing on the street and driving especially. Because so many of us are always going to have a car. No one thinks we're going to get to the point where there'll be no cars. The question is, how do we share the roads with those cars? So there are a lot of opportunities to do it. Going back to what you're saying about here on this street, I'm looking out your window at the library property, and it strikes me that what we ought to do is have a design for the road. Maybe we narrow the lanes. Maybe we put in a crosswalk here. Maybe we made a raised crosswalk, not just a speed table, but a raised crosswalk, because the studies will show you that the more vertical it appears to be as a crosswalk, the more people will slow down. So if you change the lines of sight, a lot of it is paint and DPW paving across.
Right.
But those kinds of designs have been proven to help, and we may not need as much enforcement. If we look over at Grannis, if it were narrowed a little bit, if we had more crosswalks on Grannis, then the police might not have to have speed traps every now and then, which slow traffic for a day,
Right.
maybe half a day. I don't know how long, but they're doing it. The police are doing everything they can, but we're paying police to do what ought to be done through design, and that's what I think the future holds. And around the country, as I've been involved in these various activities, I've seen examples of what works. Talking to the mayor of Hanover the other day, and he said to a group of us, said, we've done 63 different safety improvements and intersection improvements in Hanover in my terms. Great, fantastic. Let's do the same kinds of things that other towns are doing and make it safer for everybody.
Sure.
Right. And there's got to be a way for us to, even in some form, take an example from them, be able to adopt some, like you said, at some intersection that they did, even if it's not the full version of, the complete streets. Again, the safe streets is sort of a modified, more relevant version, I think, for Morris Plains. And, we were driving around the other day looking at Grannis and Stiles and Mountain Way and similar, just thinking, there's some things that can be done to slow the cars down at the end of the day, which also makes it safer for them, whether it's, even a single line in the middle of the road or having some form of a shoulder, because technically people with bicycles aren't really allowed to be on the sidewalk. So it's like, the idea is to where will they feel safe then if there's no area on the street that is blocked off, even for someone to come from the other side of town to a Wednesday night concert at Robert's Garden. They're going to want to feel safe in order to do that. So
Yeah, I think for example, right, one of the things that went in, I don't know if it was a year ago, 2 years ago, but going on Speedwell down into Morristown, they created bike lanes, right, that right up in there, and they narrowed the lanes, and even the part where I don't know what the standard for a traffic lane is. Do you know what the standard width for a traffic lane?
Depends on the designation of the road, but
Okay.
10 feet is a minimum on a local road.
Okay.
11 is preferred, 12 is better from the traffic engineer's point of
Okay.
view.
So arguably, right, that section of 202 is probably much wider than 10 or 12 feet, right? But when they built those when they put the bike lanes in, right, they also, as it kind of curves up and around into Morristown, right, they give it more and more width, right, so that people riding bikes, which they do all the time, right? There's plenty of people that live in Morristown and want to get to the train station, right? Or they work in Morris Plains, and they needed a safe way to get in to get into town. And you had before you had a kind of Wild West, if you will, of people kind of passing each other and doing all sorts of crazy things. And now with the bike lanes, it seems that it's safer, right? It's slower. You don't get as many potential accidents there as maybe previously did. So, and just watching that, right? And then it kind of almost dead ends as it comes into Morris Township and Morris Plains, right? There is no continuation of that, especially as we get into Hanover and Speedwell. So, I think for the amount of kids that are around here and the amount of things that people want to do, something like that would make sense. So
Selectively on the road, something like that might make sense. What's interesting about the Morristown experiment, which it is for the county, is that if you look at the upper part of those bike lanes, it's clogged with delivery trucks. So, and then your shared parking lane. So there are parts of it that could be adjusted, if you will, along the way. But certainly, what the primary thing that it's done is to take 4 lanes and divide it into 2, so that it slows the traffic down for that reason. Just a comment about shoulders: they're great because they narrow. They're not great legally because they're not considered travel lanes.
Right.
So while everybody thinks a bike ought to be in the shoulder, and many cyclists and people on scooters think it's safer, legally, it's not as safe as being on the road from a liability point of view. Because if something happens to you and you've been riding in the shoulder, chances are you won't be able to recover what you need to recover from an insurance company because you were not in an official travel lane. So taking a bike lane, 6 feet, let's say, and designating it as a bike lane changes it into a vehicular lane and makes it safer. So one of the arguments we might hear here in Morris Plains, for example, we don't need bike lanes. There's plenty of shoulder. Yeah, but it's not the same kind of thing as a bike lane would be along the way. What's important, though, to really step back on all these issues is you can do both long-range planning and short-range fixes simultaneously. And nothing in any of the state or federal policies says you must do X now, other than if you want to do it, there are guidelines that you have to comply with. But all of the things we're talking about have federal guidelines and state guidelines and county guidelines on what they'll accept and what they don't. And even the basic manual the engineers use, because the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices has been revised so that, for example, in setting speed limits, it used to be that they set the speed limit based on how 85% of the traffic moved. So if everybody went 50, they would set it at 85% of it's a kind of crazy thing. Instead of a decision, this is a residential street. It ought to be X because it's residential, not because everybody wants to speed on it. So let's look at 202 or Littleton Road or 202. Let's stick with 202 for a minute. Going out toward Coles and so on. That's all residential until we get to the assisted living facility and Coles and the Stop and Shop. It's a residential street. So why the speed limit set? How is it set? Why is it set? Why do we not have sidewalks on both sides? Why does the sidewalk end suddenly going toward the Coles on that side? Why does it just end instead of connecting and letting people who are in those neighborhoods feed in and walk down to grab something at Uncle Giuseppe's? I mean, there are small fixes like that are not that expensive. Some of them may just be paint. Some the DPW can do, that all lend themselves toward a future that's connected through safer ways to travel and slow traffic at the same time. I don't want to see a tragedy in Morris Plains before we make some of these changes.
Yeah, of course.
But when tragedies happen, people pay attention. So we had a young hockey star and his brother killed in Salem County, riding on a county road when a car gave them room and another car with a slightly drunk driver, not overwhelmingly drunk, but slightly drunk driver, decided, I can now pass on the right, and plowed into those bicyclists on the side. The county had rejected a side path some years ago as not a priority. Things will change now, but 2 kids had to die. We're speaking the day after the middle of Morris Plains became a parking lot from events in Central Park,
Central Park yesterday, right,
everywhere. It was just nuts yesterday. But people talked in some of the discussion about this that they saw a cyclist almost sideswipe. They saw a kid almost hit. They saw, do we have to have somebody hit before we start to do small fixes? And then also at the same time look at what do we have to wrestle with the state on something? Well, maybe we don't do that first. Maybe we do this first, because we can do Mountain Way. We can do Grannis. We can do our local streets. And then we can wrestle with the other stuff. But we can all do it as a plan for the future that's safe for everyone.
Yeah, it's a good point.
In your experience, Jim, that sort of kind of piggybacking off that, it sounds like federally, statewide, they're I don't want to say hungry, but they're pushing to have some of these things in place through some of the other mayors that you've spoken with or in your experience, is there potentially the option for grants or for funding for some of these things so it doesn't just come out of, the taxpayers' pockets as an
very, very,
example?
very, very much so. There's money out there.
Okay, and that's because that's something we could look into
We can look
as an
into,
example.
but not just from government sources. AARP has a livable communities effort for seniors primarily, but they have grants that would play into some of these small fixes. There are other organizations, nonprofits that might be willing to fund, but what it takes is a vision that we will have this kind of connectivity in the town, a vision that says, when we look at our main street, which to me is from Hanover Avenue to the train station, we want to make Main Street, as the master plan says, attractive and fitting with the character of the town. Now, maybe that doesn't mean bike lanes on an already narrow real estate on Speedwell Avenue, but maybe what it does mean is to post signs that say bicycles may use full lane.
Right.
And we could get the state, and it's a legal sign for the state, and Morristown has some of those too. What that really means is when traffic is slow, you can expect that someone on a bicycle or a scooter will be in the lane with you, because that's safer than trying to squeeze by against the curb with somebody coming up behind and crushing me from the right.
Not seeing you.
Yeah. So there, again, even for those state policies, those kinds of things may or may not qualify for grants, but what would qualify probably is a planning grant to think about how to do these things.
Yeah.
Provided the town was willing to engage in a serious look at some of the policies that are available in the state for those things. We already do one, which is Safe Routes to School,
Right.
which is great. I think we were silver. All that's preventing us from becoming gold would be a complete streets policy, which basically says this is the future, we're going to work toward it. And if we had those in place, it gives us another leg up toward the funding that might be available from a variety of sources.
And all you're talking about there is just creating a plan, right? That's all we
just
need.
a plan.
Right.
It's not a blueprint. It's not but it's a conceptual plan of, we are committed to the fact that we ought to have a town that's safe for everybody, no matter how they choose to travel. And another way of putting it is, we want to make sure that if you leave in the morning, you get home alive at night. No tragedies. Not kids, not anybody else.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I think, Bill and I on our listening tour have really seen the need for seniors in some of these things. It's not just the kids and the bikes, it's, can a senior safely walk from one side of the town to the other alone without being concerned or worried? And, that's something that came up that, is such a big piece of that, like you said, that, really some of these things could just be so beneficial across the board, from a 3-year-old on a bike to a senior going to pick up some food or something down the street.
I mean, to that point, right, if you think about the parks we have in town, right? We have Simons Park, we have Watnung Park, we have Community Park, right? As I'm trying to think about it, right, and where the senior facilities are, right? We have Arbor Terrace, which is right on Speedwell, right? We have American Road. We've got Sunrise, yeah. And I'm just trying to think in my head, like, is there a way for people from those communities to walk to each one of those parks safely? And the answer is not really.
Yeah, not really.
Not if they're on the east side of Speedwell.
Right.
I mean, and if it's an older person, then we have the stairs and the train station to cope with, and
Right.
If they were going to try and access that. But what if they stayed on their own side of the street, and if the light were longer at the station? I mean, I defy somebody with a walker to get across to the train station safely within the time limit that's provided.
I think the other point is that if we look at locations in which it's safe to cross Speedwell, there's really only two that I can think of, right? And one of them is down by the train station. It's got a proper crosswalk and stoplights, and the other is all the way down by Hanover, right? Anything in between there, yes, there are crosswalks, but there are no lighted signs. There's no indication, right? There are some flags over by...
my brokerage is right there at that one at Rosedale, and a few days a week I just go to, get a slice of pizza or something in Annabella's, and it's dangerous.
I mean, I don't know how those flags came about. I mean, certainly it's it's better than nothing, but I don't know how much it does, right? Because the flags can disappear and all that. And I've seen other areas in other towns where they have when you press the signal button, right? The sign lights up, and they have even in the crosswalk they have lights in the crosswalk to indicate. And I was thinking, as you said before, Jim, about a state road, right? That might be, well, we have to deal with the state with that.
Well, it goes back to Speedwell. The state looks kindly on those flashing beacons. And Speedwell, we have school, we have joyful noise, and why it's not 25 the whole distance is beyond me. Instead of changing speed limits midway down the block. There are not enough places to cross. There are not enough safe places to cross. The flags were an attempt locally by the Boy Scouts to try and provide some assistance. But we shouldn't have to depend on those things. I know that there are already explorations of what might be possible with those kind of flashing beacons. We have in Johnson, at the turn on Johnson Road from Malaparte, there's some better signage. And actually, the yellow signs that we have there apparently are not officially legal signs from the it's kind of confusing. The other day, somebody mentioned, I haven't had a chance to track it down.
Sure.
They said if it's yellow, it says it's a suggestion. If it's white and black, it says it's mandatory. I don't quite get that.
Interesting.
But anyway,
Okay.
I think the yellow pops out. So
I agree. I think the yellow is more prominent, but okay.
And so it's an example of what's been done. So there have been good things that have been done.
Sure.
But to address the main problem we have, which is the east-west divide, the Speedwell example of the fact, and in fact, it's a moving barrier for us to be able to relate to both sides of the street. That does for the kinds of development that many people have suggested that they want in town, the kinds of development that might be possible, that replicate in some ways the vibe and the variety that we have at Farmers Market, or what's happened in the Speedwell extension, or the kinds of things that really, hey, that's kind of cool. I'd like to do that. To be able to go on either side of the street, if I want Japanese food now, I want to walk to get it. If I'm on the west side, I have to now do with the train station, traffic light, and the rest. And if I want to go down to Annabella's and I live on this side, I got to cross over. If I want to go to Woodham Barbecue on that side, I've got to cross. We've got to cross Speedwell in some ways. That's a state battle. But if we have the vision that this is what we want, then we do the local things, and we build up, and we do the state things, and we look toward. I've always thought, and when I first started to talk about these things for Morris Plains, it was in our centennial in 2026. Wouldn't it be great if we're on the way to becoming one of the best downtowns and one of the most livable, walkable, safe communities in the county? And why not? Why can't we do that? Why can't we do that? And the answer is we can. Do we have the money? Do we have people in town who are interested? Do we have the opportunity through state and federal policies? It's there. There are great opportunities. When are we going to seize them? More directly than we have. And I think things have happened that are positive, but we need to keep going, and we need to do more.
Something like working with the state is exhausting. It takes a lot of time, right? But it's worth it because it's our town, right? And it's important to the residents of the town. It's important to bring other people into town, right? One of the things that as part of the master plan is revitalizing the downtown. And how do we do that, right? Well, we already have great communities here, right? People have great homes, but we need to revitalize some of the businesses that have been here for 40, 50, 60 years. And some of those businesses are wonderful, but we need to attract new ones. I know Chocolatina is going to go in downtown, but how do we attract more businesses like that? And there's certain things we can do with zoning and tax incentives and all sorts of other things like that. But to really, once you have the business, right, you need people to come to patronize the business to be able to keep it going. And not everybody wants to drive, right? And even people that come on a train, they want to be able to walk through our downtown. So certainly the types of businesses that we bring here are important, but how people get to those businesses, I think, is even more important. If we put that infrastructure in place, then it's going to be easier for the businesses to want to build something downtown Morris Plains because everybody will come there. So,
agreed. We already have a car-centric downtown, Briarcliff Commons. That's car-centric, and it's on Route 10.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
Where it should be. Yeah.
Perfect for there. Exactly.
Perfect for there. That's not here. That's not Speedwell.
Right.
That's
Right.
It's different, and the merchant that's different. And let's capitalize on the differences. Go to Chick-fil-A. Go to Kohl's. Go to Giuseppe's. But here, what kinds of things do people want? We got this, the plant stores. The nice stuff he puts out. The plant store, chocolatine. Apparently, it sells out at the farmers markets. I don't know.
I think it's going to sell out once it's on Speedwell
Once it's
too.
there,
I
too.
might because I'm going there every day, but I'll try to behave myself.
Well, we had a local brewery that opened up on Route 10 that could. Why isn't it downtown? And what happened to the Colliers liquor license? And what are the things that make sense? What people want in these kinds of downtowns are service businesses, by and large. What can we do to help the existing businesses hang on, thrive along the way? And we have a nice little gift shop on one side that's caught in the rough with all the stuff like there. So it's been amazing to me, the state argument. So we can have a don't block the box at the end of Glenbrook to protect the bank traffic.
Right.
And cars coming out of Glenbrook. But and then a fine of what? $53? I don't know what it is.
Whatever
a
it is,
fine. Fine.
Yeah.
The state allows us to do that,
Right.
but it won't allow us to put in more crosswalks and more crossing lights. And it takes time working with the state and passing the law that I did, and I'm working now on a couple of other state laws. It takes time, and you've got to talk to people, and you've got to find the right person to talk to. But is it impossible? No.
Right.
It's not impossible.
Right.
But it's got to tie together. It can't just be, well, we figured this would be cool. No, it's got to be, here's the evidence, here's why we need to do it, here's the way it fits into the vision, all of which we have the pieces of. It's put it together and let's go after it. Again, as I say, let's do the things we can do first. Let's work on this so we get that done as well. And I know that we have a current issue going on with what happens on Speedwell, but I think it's a good demonstration of what people feel about what ought to be part of that downtown. Now, whatever happens,
And the people
with
are
that,
talking, which is what Bill
People
and I's
are talking.
goals was to have it out there so people can voice their opinion, and to just let people know about it. And I think you'll be an integral part of knowledge for Bill and I, let's say, if and when we're elected, to have your expertise and your opinions will be invaluable to people like us, and the vision, because like you said, who is creating that vision? And I think as we are sort of continuing to modernize the downtown, we're going to need to have some of these things implemented, because if there is going to be more foot traffic, we have to have that vision and some of those local things, like you said, in place, because if it starts there, I do feel it will snowball and people will come and they will notice how amazing it is and how it feels safe. And even on a Saturday morning, watching all the people go from the farmers market to those stores, they want to go to those stores across the street, but
it's too hard.
what's going to be there for them to go to? I'm just thinking, like you said, in the future of the couple of the vacancies, and I see them going to what's there. So think about when we can really have all those as vibrant businesses with the proper walkways and everything. And I get excited just thinking about it, and the opportunity for our kids after school in the future to have that place to go hang out at and feel safe and know they can walk or be on a bicycle. And that would take some concern off of me, knowing that that's there.
But what alternatives do we have here? Morristown has exploded. It's full of young people. It's full of young people getting married. It's full of young people looking for housing. And Morristown's not exactly friendly in terms of what the rents are and, finding a place and
affordability and livability, right.
So they start to look around. On our street, just my wife yesterday met a young couple who bought a house and they're renovating the entire place. And where do they live now? Morristown. Why did they come here? It's nice.
Right.
It's a good alternative to what's in. So we have the opportunity to capitalize, it seems to me, on what people want, especially the younger, from what everything I read, from what I hear from those who I know who are younger than I am. There's a desire for that.
Yes.
Now, is there also a desire for convenient public transportation? Well, if it's convenient and I can rely on it, yes.
Yeah.
Not otherwise. Do I want to give up my car? No. But I don't want to have to use it all the time.
Right.
And if I'm going to come downtown, let's take a simple thing on our main street. We have public parking. Where's the sign that says free public parking?
Right.
entrance, exit. Not that they're the best entrances and exits in the world for safety, but there's no sign there that says that.
Right.
So those simple things that would attract the people to come in. So maybe they want to come in from Randolph and they want to spend an afternoon. They've heard we're going to Arthur's. Everybody goes to Arthur's,
Yeah.
right? We're coming down from Randolph, going to go to Arthur's. And when it's done, I want to get an ice cream. I hear there's a good ice cream shop next door. Where am I going to park?
Right.
I don't know. There's a lot behind there. There is? Yeah. There's, just go down the hill and go down. So there are ways that we can attract people who already want those kinds of businesses. But ultimately, it's how do we serve our own, before we think about those coming in from elsewhere, it's how do we serve what's our population now, 7,000?
Close to. Yeah,
Close
it's
to
about
7,000?
6,600, I think.
Yeah. And we're still growing.
Yeah.
So how can we keep everybody pretty much happy with what we have downtown?
Yeah.
And on the side streets, if we go over to, if you want to use Community Park, how can we make sure that the sign into the museum and the park is a little bit better? Just to me, it's simple things like here's Community Park, big sign, they're this way instead of small little sign. So there are ways that we can bring our own people into our own facilities. And most people, word of mouth, they're going to find out, I agree. But nonetheless, why not promote some of this stuff as well? And the more people we have who are walking into Community Park, the more people are going to slow down. In effect, to slow cars down, it means everybody has to say, I may be a minute later, but I've saved a life. And I can tell you, if you end up as the person who killed somebody or seriously injured a kid, you will never forgive yourself for that saving of the extra minute.
Right.
One of the groups I work with is called Families for Safe Streets, composed of those who have lost somebody. And their stories are heart-wrenching, and it ripples out from the driver to the driver's family. It ripples out from the victim to the victim's community. Nobody who gets in their car this morning and starts it is going to say, I want to go out and kill somebody.
Yeah. Right.
The point is, what kinds of roads are we driving on that might allow that to happen?
Yeah.
What kinds of decisions do we make when we get behind the wheel? And most of all, can we just put the stuff down, look around, watch out for each other as we drive, supported by better crosswalks, by slower lanes, by all those things we've talked about. So it all works together in so many ways.
This is a great start to the conversation. I think as Tyler and I go on, throughout the next, we've got 44 days now till the election.
Not too much time.
So who's counting?
Yeah, exactly. So we got just a little bit of time to the election. I think we're looking forward to this, but I don't want to say that we're thinking past the election, but it wouldn't be responsible of us just to say, hey, we're hoping we get elected and then we don't really have a plan, right? I think all of this is to say these are the things that we want to create so that when we do get elected in November, let's hit the ground running. And what are some of the things we could do day one when we get in there? Here's the initiatives that we want to talk about, right? And I think this is one of them.
Yeah, I think people want platitudes to go away.
Yeah.
They want promises.
Yeah.
And it's not a partisan issue.
Yeah.
I mean, this safety is not red and blue.
Exactly.
Safety is just everybody in this, and the kinds of things that need to be talked about are that. Plus, the idea, I think, that people, the hunger for knowledge, the transparency, can I go down and get a document easily, or is it hard to get a document? Are the agendas that are published detailed, or are they not detailed? But people want to be engaged. And so tapping across all the political spectrum, the people who want to do stuff to help along the way is a real value that you're bringing to the campaign right now.
Yeah. And I think it's the responsible thing to do. I think that my opinion, and I think Tyler shares his opinion, is that the leaders that are elected are there to represent the people of Morris Plains, and they're there, and those needs change year after year, decade after decade, as new generations move in, as you mentioned, right? There's people moving in from other towns because they like Morris Plains. They like the small suburban feel that Morris Plains has, but it's close enough to trains. It's close enough to transportation. They can take the bus. They can keep their cars, right? But those needs change over time, and we need to evolve with that. And the needs of the people involved with that as well. So these are all wonderful things that we're trying to really take stock of. So like I said, we kind of hit the ground running when we get in there. So.
Well, oftentimes people wait to get elected and then they start listening. So it's
Yeah, we sort of did the opposite, I guess,
I
because
think
that's,
that's a good.
you know,
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt that anybody who runs for office, and anybody who's elected, is buying themselves a whole mountain of headaches.
For sure.
oh, but these are,
So,
you know, things
so I
where-
will get you a big bottle.
But these are things we're excited to, you know, I say to fight for, but to listen to the voices and to bring, you know, to bring those voices to the council and to, you know, getting some of those things in place. And again, and the listening doesn't stop, you know, we're excited because, again, hopefully if and when elected, we want to continue to do this podcast and continue to have people on like yourself that have that wealth vast of knowledge or experience that we just don't have. But through talking with people like you, listening and understanding, not only can we learn, but we can work together to get the plan and to get, you know, all these incredible, safe, you know, things moving forward. So, you know, really important to get to have had you here today. And I know I learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Jim, thanks so much for coming on. This is not.
Thank you.
This is definitely not the last conversation
Yeah.
we're gonna have. I think we're just scratching the surface of some of the things we can do here. I think you've given us a lot of ideas about, you know, how we can hit the ground running. Some things we can do maybe day one with some things here, and then the longer term solutions. So again, really appreciate you coming on today. And
Well, thanks for inviting me, and again, thanks for what you're doing to get everybody talking.
great, thanks, Jim.
Happy to do it. Thank you.
Appreciate it.